Welcome everybody to November 2021 Native American Heritage Month. My name is McCauley. I am back here to keep on continually giving you more education, more resources on how you can better your teaching here in 2021. So thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Thank you for subscribing if you've already been subscribed. So today the topic that I would like to talk about is how to incorporate contemporary, this is very, very, very important, contemporary Native American representation into your music classroom. And I want to start off first and foremost with a story. So I'm a music educator, as most of you know. You came here to my music channel, but I'm also a Native American powwow dancer. Most recently a composer. Within the last few years, I sing some of our circle dance songs here from Nevada. I've entered a few hand drum contests. And I'm always constantly learning about other cultures, including my own and others, on how the best way to represent all of these cultures in the classroom. I'm also a performer, so when I say I'm a performer, I've been performing and doing performances for other schools and different types of organizations since I've been 8 years old. In my elementary school, we had a dance group, and so that dance group would travel to other elementary schools and do just dances. And we had some people who would get up, like the women who ran the group. She would get up and they would explain what the dances were that we're doing to the audience that we performed for. So I did that in elementary school. Skipped high school because that's when I did all of my classical music stuff. I was in the honor bands, practicing, oh my gosh, probably 8 to 10 hours plus every week. And then came back when in college, I started dancing again. So one of the things when I became an educator, well, actually, let's back up. Before I became an educator and I got my teaching license, my very first job out of college was the Intertribal Higher Education Program Coordinator for a university. So I was working directly into the equity field at a university. And one of the things that I had to do was be able to help the Native American students who are at college, because there is a high dropout rate because there's not that many services that support students who come from the Native American background. There's becoming more all the time. And I was one of those students who I'm a very determined individual. So you put an obstacle in front of me, you have professors who are clearly discriminating against me in their classroom and nobody's doing anything about it. I'm just going to go ahead and work harder to educate you and, work my way through it. So that is me. And I got through my undergrad not having the type of supports that I would want. So when I became the person to take over the job to make supports for Native American students way back in 2004, that was a long time ago, as my first job. One of the things when we did outreach to students about college, especially the younger Native college students who, we were reaching out to people in 7th grade at that time. Now research shows, the earliest you can talk to kids about college, then they could go to college. But at that time it was 7th grade. And one of my biggest points to make was that we needed videos to show our Native students specifically, and other people, current Natives, not the old textbook, what people look like a long time ago. We needed current Native Americans at that time in 2004. So I interviewed some of the college students. I put together a DVD, just learned how to do it on my own. It took hours and hours, got myself into one of the studios at the library, at the tech center at my university library, put that thing together, and then put it out there for dissemination so that Native American students could see actual collegiate students, what we look like, how we talk, the things we did. And so that's the thing that I'm encouraging you right now today. And I heard this also from some other Native American educators who are educating non-natives about what you can do for Native American Heritage Month, which is November. And that is show accurate representations, contemporary representations first to your students. So why is this important? This is important first and foremost because your students, and including yourself, maybe you found this video and you've never met a Native American person yourself. You don't know any. You didn't even know we were in existence still. You thought we were all died off from the plague, or you thought we were all killed, or genocide, or whatever you thought. Well, that is not the case. We are here, we are contemporary. Our people have gone through a lot of oppression. We have gone through a lot of injustices, and still continue to do so. But we're here, and it just goes to show the strength of our ancestors that they had to endure such things so that I could be here. Myself, personally, all of my grandparents went to boarding school. None of them spoke English as their first language. These are my grandparents. And none of them spoke their English language when they were born, but they were all sent to the boarding schools, and that's where they learned English. I never heard them tell of any stories. They never talked about boarding school with me ever. I did try to ask when I was in college, in my undergraduate. I got no response. And that's not for them to always have to tell me if something was hard. So then I just went ahead and was like, okay, well, I'm still here. I'm going to be getting my education no matter how hard it is. I read up on the boarding schools, and I read about a lot of things that happened to my people, and we're still here. One of the most interesting facts about my tribe, I'm a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe in Nevada, is that we were not displaced. I am still in the land that my ancestors originally were. And this is due to one of the wars that took place in here in the West during that time, and our tribes pulled together and they won against the colonizers and the settlers who were in the area. You don't hear about victories like that, but there are a ton of victories that happened, which is why Native American people are still here in the United States. It just shows the persistence that and just you know how we can pull together as a tribe, and like we more than anything care about the resources, our land, and each other, and we are building back up despite what was done to us by our own United States government. So through that, we know how to speak English now, which is how I'm speaking to you right now. And there are going to be no miscommunications in what modern day natives say. There's many of us out there who have gone to higher education. There's many of us out there who have served in the armed forces. There are many of us out there who serve in every profession that there is, in very low numbers, but we are there. And so showing contemporary representations of who Native American people are today is extremely important, because number one, many of you out there, the only people who can say they really come from the United States are the indigenous people here who live in this land, as science and anthropologists and everybody are proving every day. They keep finding and carbon dating more bone structures or artifacts that are becoming 10,000 years old. And so there are people who are originated here that are debunking some of the old historical myths or old historical thoughts that some people like to hold on to. But when you show accurate contemporary representations of Native Americans in your own classroom to your students, like someone like myself, it puts us in a very realistic a way. So your students will be looking at us thinking, wow, oh, the Native American people who were originally here, they are still here. Yes, we are. There are over 576 federally recognized tribes. So what does that mean? A federally recognized tribe means that the United States government has recognized this tribe as being one of the tribal nations that is here. If you are federally recognized, that means that that tribe is therefore entitled to land. When a tribe is entitled to land, that is where the tribal members will live. These are places that are called reservations or colonies or rancherias, and oftentimes when you're driving through different parts of the country, when you find one, you will see signs that say now entering the Pyramid Lake Paiute Indian Reservation. When you leave my reservation, it says now leaving the Pyramid Lake Paiute Indian Reservation. There are some states without tribes, and that would be really worthwhile to look into the history as to why that is. Oftentimes you'll find that land was promised. There were treaties that were drawn up, and those treaties were not followed through with. And even now, to this very current day and age that we are living in 2021, there are always cases about land and Native American treaty rights. These things are still being decided in the highest court that we have in the land. They're being fought and won every single day. And this is extremely important because no other group in this whole entire United States has an entire branch of the government dedicated solely only to that culture. And so the Department of the Interior right now, which is run by Deb Haaland, a Native woman for the first time in the entire history of the United States, is run by her. Now you can imagine if it's been run by a non-Native the whole entire time, being able to get a tribe recognized has been harder. And if you've never known about this here in your own United States, of course you don't. This is a very specialized area that you have to dig deep and you have to go and find resources about. So when we are dealing with contemporary Native American music, since we're talking about music education, there are a ton of videos out there. And if you've come to my channel, specifically on my channel, I am a powwow dancer. I try to travel to as many powwows that I can get to. And it's not necessarily my full-time, it's not my full-time gig, but I have plenty of videos on here that show you what real life powwow videos look like. And then along with the dancing, you hear the singing, you hear the drumming, and it would be worthwhile to show your students videos that are current today. So I have some new videos that I put up this year in 2021. I have videos from 2018, 2017, I believe maybe from 2020, but I'm also a music educator. And when you show your students, hey, here is a music educator that I'm learning from or something like that, when you draw that personal connection to the video, the contemporary video of this day and age that you are showing your students are likely to be more engaged because they also see you drawing a parallel in your life, making it real for you, the educator. And that's the other part of this, showing accurate contemporary, representations of Native Americans. Make it real. It's got to be real for you, and then it'll be real for your students. And always, always, always learn. So I'm going to backtrack to a story, which I said I was going to start out with, and I completely did not. So this story has to do with when I was an elementary music educator in my neighboring school district that I am closest to. I have done presentations for there's a lot of elementary music teachers. I think we had like 70 around there or something like that. So they asked me to do presentations for them, and I did. So one presentation I chose to show people, show the educators, here's the round dance. I showed them a video. Here's how we do this dance. And it's always referred to as a round dance, not a friendship dance. The minute I hear friendship dance, and I explained to some of the educators, friendship dance is kind of where we're getting into cultural appropriation, because that's more likely an outsider who saw that and thought that, oh, this dance looks like, no, we call it a round dance. It's a round dance and it's for everybody. So I showed them, these educators, here's a round dance. And then I gave them some circle dance songs from my area that I have been given permission to use. And not all of our music is religious or for ceremonies. There's songs that we can share and things like that. So make sure whoever you're learning from has that knowledge. And then I highly recommend YouTube videos. And the type of YouTube videos that I recommended at this time were of myself, because many of the colleagues that I work with, while they've known me since high school, some of them have known me only as a colleague when they started working with me, but I stand out obviously because I'm different. I don't look like all the other teachers coming in there, and they know I'm Native because if they ask me, I tell them, and I actually lead with my culture because that's how I function in the world. And so I recommended that teachers show a couple of my videos, and to again build in that connection that you have as the educator for them to have, as they had a direct connection to me. I said, use these videos and say, hey, I know this music educator. I talked to her, blah, blah, blah. And then the students are just like, oh, she's on YouTube. So this is what I recommended to colleagues. Well, at the time, my daughter was in first grade, and there was a colleague of mine who I knew was listening to me and who I instructed in a certain way on how to represent Native American representations on what type of videos to show. Well, this educator chose not to listen to me and instead he chose to go choose a video that matched up with what he thinks Native Americans are. Now, the only reason why I know about this is because my daughter at the time, she was only a first grader. She's very young. She was very young at this time. And she came home and she said, "Mom," I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she said, "The students in my class today laughed at my culture and she's like, they were laughing at my culture." And I was like, "What do you mean laughing at your culture? Wait, what is going on?" And then she said in music class, her teacher showed her a video and then her students around her started laughing. And she said, "But it was my culture and it just made me sad." And so my daughter at this point is like 6 years old. She is not fully aware. She is not fully, her mind isn't developed enough to where she could have a nuanced conversation and say, "Hey, this is not the best representation of my culture, and why are you saying?" So we have to understand as educators, when you show outdated or stereotypical views or what you think of as Native Americans, young kids, my daughter knew to an extent, like, something's wrong here. Everyone's laughing at my culture and I don't think this is funny. And what this educator went and did is he showed a video that he found from the 1970s, which was outdated for today's standards, of a version of a Native American dancing that you will not see anywhere. And what ended up happening, he didn't explain anything at the beginning. He didn't even draw any type of connection to the video like I recommended. And my daughter happened to be in that class, and this is kind of what happened. So the damage was done there. I wasn't there, but all I had to tell my daughter was, "Alani, sometimes some teachers don't understand and they can't explain who we are to people because they don't know. And kids who don't know, they need to learn and they need to have a teacher who can tell them about that. So let me go ahead and talk to your teacher." And so how do we approach these situations? This is a delicate situation because here we have a colleague to colleague representation, someone who did not take my advice because he thought he knew better. And how do I know that he thought he knew better? Because when I did get a chance to talk to him in one of our PDs, I happened to mention, I said, "Hey, did you show a Native video, any of the videos that I had recommended that you show to your classes about Native Americans? Did you happen to show any of those?" And he said, "No, actually, let me show you what I showed them. I found some really cool stuff." And so I got to see, and he was all proud to tell me his version of what he thought Native Americans were. Just kind of taking that overprivileged step and that I'm a classical musician, I know better, kind of taking that I know better approach to it. And so once I saw the video, I really understood, okay, this is exactly what I was trying to avoid, because the video was outdated. It's something that your students will not see ever because that time has now passed. And who are we now, and drawing a conclusion. Not only had he used the contemporary video and drawn the conclusion, this is also one of your classmates' parent, there would have been a lot more reason to pay attention and to not giggle so much and to be like, "Oh my gosh, this is real. This is a real life situation. Like our classmates sitting right there." So I say this and I share this to you. If you are not a Native American person yourself, if you didn't even know we existed until now, defer to what the culture bearers or defer to advice that you're getting from people who live this lifestyle. I happen to be a very, I'll say there's some special circumstances surrounding me as a music educator in that I've traveled to different places in the world to be able to dance and represent my culture among other cultures, and to hear and to see people come at me with stereotypes in many different forms. And so even being inside the classroom, I know what it's like to be outside the classroom, and I know what it's like to be in a lot of areas in the United States when I still do presentations to non-natives and natives, but mostly when I do presentations to non-natives, that's where I get the questions. That's where I get still the stereotypes. And when I've actually taught in several schools, that's where I also start to know that, hey, our history, teachers, grown adults still don't see any value in contemporary Native Americans, because there's this idea that somehow we lost, you know, we were inferior. But when you actually do know your history and you go back and you look at the tribes surrounding how your state became a state, you find the broken treaties, you find the lies, you find that the tribes are actually, we're still fighting today for everyone's resources, not just for our own tribal nations, but for everybody's. So please, please, please make sure you are using contemporary representations of Native Americans. This is not only a tribute to music, right? You can find powwow style dancing, which is our contemporary intertribal competitive dancing that we do. That's what I take part in. You can also look up different drum groups. You could put up powwow drum groups 2021. 2020, during the pandemic, there was so much music online. There's a couple of Facebook pages, the virtual round dance page, which is still going on, by the way. This page, the virtual round dance Facebook group page, featured singers from around Canada, all over Canada, and all over the United States, and it still does. And I'm featured on I can't remember which week I decided to join in and sing a song, but I'm even featured in there. So we had singing continually going on through the pandemic. So there are so many contemporary representations out there to have. And if you live in a city, I'm just going to say this as well. A lot of times I get music educators, well, I live in the city and there's no tribes here. Most Native Americans do not live on the reservations. They actually live in metropolitan areas. And oftentimes in big cities, especially like Houston, Chicago, San Francisco, there are organizations set up within these cities to service American Indians or Native Americans who live off the reservation. And this is something most people don't know, but you can go ahead and find up organizations probably in your metropolitan area. I know when I've traveled to, I think it was New York, different cities, if I travel to it and I'm looking for natives, I know that there's got to be a center of some kind. So we have social media. I could just look that up and be like, okay, where's the American Indian Center? Not a museum, an actual like center, a place where they go. Healthcare, there's usually like healthcare clinics or something set up, and they usually could have a educational department, a cultural department, things like that. So I hope this video was informative to you. There's many different segments that I could go off in areas I could go into much deeper detail. But the whole point of this particular video was make sure you are using contemporary Native American representations. Start off with that first with all of your students, especially your students who are international. Well, actually, pretty much everybody's international unless you're from a Native American tribe here in the United States. Then you come from somewhere else. So and we are everywhere, all over social media. That we have famous TikTokers. Some of the famous TikTokers, I believe we have James, oh my gosh, what's his name? I'll put some more links down below of some other representations that you can find, contemporary representations this Native American Heritage Month. But please start off with the contemporary natives first.